Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Today, I am talking with Tara. She is a grief and transformational life coach and host of the Life with Grief podcast. After losing her parents to cancer within 6 months of each other, she eventually created Losses Become Gains to support and guide fellow grievers. In this episode, she talks about the loss of her parents and going through a traumatic birth. She also discusses grief and what helped her through it. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Tara. Tara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. I guess I could kind of just start with like who I am, what I do in my spare time, that kind of fun stuff. So I am a wife and mom to as of this recording, a 10-month-old who keeps us very, very busy. Prior to that, I was born on the East Coast, lived there until I was about 10, and I am now in California. But really my whole family is on the East Coast. So I have my roots there. And yeah, I sort of got into this grief space. So in addition to my usual day job, I am a grief and transformational life coach. And that journey for me really started, I guess in 2019 when I lost my mom. So very, very long story short, she was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in probably like May or June of 2019, and it was very aggressive. Quite frankly, it was just caught too late. And from there, it was just a really horrible decline to watch and very surreal because I feel like so many listeners here might be able to empathize with this. Is like there's just especially certain people in your life where you just don't see, you almost like feel like they're invincible, right? Like these horrible things that happen or happen to them, like it doesn't, you like can't compute it. It doesn't make sense for like their personality. And my mom was this beautiful little 5 foot, 5'1", blonde, total opposite of me, curly haired tourist. She was just like a little firecracker, just had this incredible, incredible energy. And to see her physically and also mentally too, just being, for lack of a better term, sort of taken down by this illness was just very surreal to watch and witness. And at one point during that journey, she had to get a tracheotomy as well. And it was very abrupt, that happening. So there was sort of like, in the midst of all of this, she wasn't even gone yet, but she was not herself. So it's like we're grieving that. I'm grieving never hearing her speak again, which I couldn't even like grieve in the moment, but like almost after the fact, I was like, oh my God, I never heard my mom's voice after that specific day. And like, they just don't, nobody teaches you this. No one warns you about how, or even if they did warn you, it's hard to comprehend navigating all of this until you're in it. So I didn't really know what anticipatory grief was, but I sure learned about it later on, especially as I became a grief coach as well and really got into this space and definitely understood that that is what I was experiencing some of. And so essentially, she journeyed through this cancer diagnosis for, I guess, probably 7 or 8 months, and then died in December of 2019. So coming up on 5 years right now, which is insane. And then my dad, throughout this whole journey, also had prostate cancer. He had had it for 5, like almost 6 years at this point. And it was being managed. I mean, he had just gone through various treatments and things. I mean, thankfully they caught it sort of on the earlier side, but it was there. He was never sort of in remission from what I remember. And as my mom was declining, I mean, at one point they both had pneumonia at the same time, which is a little scary because pneumonia can actually be fatal. Like it's still a thing that and especially my parents weren't particularly old, but as they were obviously immune compromised, like it was just something we had to watch. And I just think that for him, watching his life partner, his wife of over 35 years, go through this, and then, of course, after her death, I think there was just something in him that was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I don't even want to like sort of be here without her. So, and he even sort of told me that. I mean, and it's not that he wanted to leave me or like leave our life here or my 19-year-old dog, who was like the little light of our family at the time. But yeah, I mean, his cancer just a few months after my mom died ended up metastasizing, eventually went into like his lower back and into his brain. So there was a time really where it was at the most dire that I came home one day. This happened a couple times actually. I had to call the ambulance for him to get him to a hospital because he was just dehydrated and just not well. So yeah, he ended up passing away in July of 2020. So this was also crazy. It was obviously during kind of the height of COVID. Thankfully, he didn't get that, but just being able to see him in his hospice facility, I mean, all of it, it was just like, again, surreal is like my word of the day, I guess. Very surreal. Went through a breakup during that time too, so that added a lot of layer of complexity to all of this. Spoiler alert, we got back together. It's now my husband. That's a story for another day, but just there's just so much loss that, and I frankly had a very blissfully like naive, pretty easy life up until that point in terms of navigating grief. I mean, I had lost some family members. It was when I was younger. I grieved those the best way I could for the age that I was, but it's nothing like losing a parent, and certainly not two sort of back to back like that. And then the following year, the dog that I just mentioned, our sweet 19-year-old Bichon Frise, she died. And so I just, eventually got to this point where I was like, my entire immediate family is gone. Like, yes, I have my extended family and everything, but it's not the same as your core, right? Your immediate people that you're just so accustomed to being with every single day, or being able to call or text and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, ultimately my journey of becoming a grief coach and being a grief educator of sorts, and just helping fellow grievers through their journey all sort of stemmed from that. So in 2022, I just began writing, and that began in blog form. And then eventually I launched Losses Become Gains in late 2022. And that was literally just on Instagram. It was just my blog and Instagram, just trying to talk as vulnerably as I could about grief and the grieving journey. And that has snowballed into everything that it is now, Life with Grief podcast, and then the various other things that I do to kind of help grievers along through one-on-one coaching, my membership, and all the things. And then we can also talk about this, but I'll leave it here for now. We also had a bit of a traumatic birth experience as well. So thankfully my daughter is okay, and things are good, but it definitely brought up a lot of things in my grieving journey that, it's just these things that you just don't see coming that really, you can think you're like really stable and doing really well, and then something completely unexpected happens. So, I mean, for anyone who says grief has any kind of timeline or there's any rules about grief, no, that just all goes out the window. And there's a reason. I definitely am a firm believer that it is a process. It is one that never really ends. It is sort of for a lifetime. So it really comes down to, how to navigate that and how to still live a very fulfilling and meaningful life with grief in tow.
That is definitely a lot of grief and loss to have happen like back to back like that, and it's like you think, okay, this is the worst.
Yeah.
And it gets worse.
And it was like so not even the worst. Yeah.
You're like,
I'm
oh
like,
my gosh, like,
wow.
did you ever just feel like, I know with pregnancy loss and things like that, a lot of the times we feel guilty about it or like feel like this, like I must be a bad person or something like that. Is that anything you felt at all?
Yeah, I think like karmically, I was like, what the heck? Like, really, what did I do? And like I mentioned, I'm a transformational life coach as well. So there was like a specific certification that I got to do that. And I now have sort of a different relationship with karma and what karma means. And it is like not sort of what I originally once believed it to be. But that aside, I mean, yeah, definitely. It just didn't even feel like my life that I was living, if that makes sense.
Did you get insensitive comments ever about like, oh, you're grieving too long, shouldn't you move on? Like things like that.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully not that many. I think where a lot of truthfully, a lot of the comments have come from one specific person. And this was, and I've actually talked about this on my platforms a little bit before. I don't reveal their identity, but essentially it was this woman that my mom used to work with. And every so often I just kind of get it randomly, not quite so abrasively, but I think there was something, and this is when losses become gains was like really up and running, things I post about, right? And she had followed that account and was following me and stuff. And she had reached out multiple times on through Facebook Messenger, and one batch of messages of hers was extremely triggering for me. And it was all of the things, all of the things that I, as like a grief coach and educator, like would say not to do. Kind of like you're obviously, I'm totally paraphrasing, but you're stuck. Like, why can't you just be happy? Just focus on your husband and daughter. Why are you dwelling? You're not the only one that have lost someone. I lost my mom, my dad, and my brother. And you need to get over it. You need to move on. And I could
It's
keep
like, why
going.
did you even follow me then?
It was
Like,
exactly. I literally said, I don't think I even said this, but what I wanted to say, like, no one's forcing you to be here. Like,
right?
and in fact, I'm not gonna lie, I think I actually blocked her, and not out of like pettiness, but it was literally out of like, I do not need this energy. I barely know you. And that was the other very sort of like frankly offensive thing was she was just like, I knew your mom, and she would not like what you're doing. She would not like that you're profiting off of her death and your dad's death and stuff, like as if she thinks I make millions of dollars grief coaching. Spoiler alert, I don't. Okay. Literally most of what I do is out of from my heart.
Wanting to help
It is
other people. Like, yeah,
not
you're
for
not trying
financial
to
gain.
become a millionaire off of people's grief.
Right. I'm just like, and I'm sorry that it takes me a little time to put resources and things together. And every so often I might charge for that. Okay. But like, it just, that really struck something with me. And I was like, you have no idea. And I think that's really where a lot of my fire and my passion to like educate people and normalize grief and get these awful at least statements, at least you had as much time with them as you did and things like that. Like, I don't understand why people feel the need to say those things as if that is going to miraculously make someone who's grieving feel differently about it or feel better. Oh, you're right. I guess I got to get over it now. It doesn't work that way. Like, that. So yeah. So anyway, long story short, yes, I've definitely had some insensitive comments, but it just fuels my fire and frankly makes me talk about it even more. So jokes
I
on
know
them.
that's what people don't understand. It's like you said, how does that make us feel better? Oh, I
No.
guess I shouldn't be dwelling. I never thought of that. Like,
Yeah. And I just felt very I think that's where there's an opportunity again for this grief education and this grief literacy too, because sometimes we just feel very misunderstood. And did it ever occur to this woman that maybe it helps me to talk about it? Being able to talk about it, just like on a podcast like this, is very cathartic and very healing. And it keeps them alive for me instead of tamping it down and just trying to like, move on. Like it's beautiful that we have the opportunity to speak about our loved ones and our losses and things like this. So I'm actually the least stuck I've ever been in my life. And that's a really beautiful gift. I'm not going to say it's like a gift that my parents died and all of that, but like
I know
if
what you're
there's
saying.
anything that came out of this, it's that, I understand the grieving experience far differently than I ever did prior to losing them. And just being able to support people in that way is very special. So,
I feel like a lot of people too take experiences like this, like these big losses, and turn it into something to help other people because we feel so alone in our
yes,
grief. And
very
it's just such a lonely time, even when you're surrounded by support. And a lot of people have no support. So, I think it's
definitely.
like you said, it's helpful to help other people. It helps us heal too.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
So you mentioned that you also went through a traumatic birth of your daughter. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So basically, I had a frankly a very healthy pregnancy. There was no red flags. I had some morning sickness, probably weeks like 5 to 8, but other than that, like and some very severe back pain in the later trimesters. Those of us who have been there, you know how that feels. There was there was no concerns. There was nothing to be alarmed about. Had good checkups, all the things. So her original due date was February 19th and of this of 2024. And so January rolls around and things are fine. I mean, she's definitely getting bigger, so the movements feel different. But this is probably the second week of January because we literally it's crazy the crazy timing. We had our sort of maternity shoot. We got some maternity photos done. I think on like that's like Sunday or something. And then that week was sort of like any other week, but as a mom, as a person carrying this little baby, you are very connected with them. You sort of learn when they move more, when they move less, whatever, the different times of day, all the things. And she was always particularly active, which a lot of babies in utero are like after you eat and things like that. So she was like, she's a night girly. So she was like quite active, sort of around like the 8 to 10 p.m. time. And there was like a few nights where I felt like I started feeling her move a little bit less, or just kind of not kicking as much, things like that. And it was a delicate balance of like not being too worried about that and understanding because doctors had said this, sometimes they just start more like rolling instead of kicking because they're kind of losing space in there a little bit. So I was like, okay, kind of just keeping an eye on this. But there got to a point where, and I remember specifically that week, it was that Thursday, I guess that would be the 11th. We were at my in-laws, or maybe this was that Friday. Anyway, we were over at my in-laws and we like ate. And I just remember that whole day not feeling really any movement, maybe like one kick here and there. And it was pretty faint. And so we ate dinner and I got one kick that entire night. And I was like, this is really weird. I just like got intuition. I'm like, I don't have a great feeling about this. And I even said it out loud. My mother-in-law even remembers me saying it. And yeah, this was on a Friday because then the next morning, I remember being up at like 5 or 5:30. I just, was trying to lay on my left side just to like, get that blood flow going, whatever, all the things that they would recommend. Try to eat something, wasn't feeling anything. So I called the the doctor or I think just the birthing place that we were going to give birth at a hospital, maybe 35, 40 minutes away. And I explained the situation. They were like, well, just come in. Like, better safe than sorry. Whatever. We could just check her out. I was like, okay. So I like tell my husband, I'm like, hey, we're going to the hospital. This is maybe like, I don't know how early this was, but he was like, really? You're like that worried? I'm like, yeah, something's not right. I can't explain it. I just know. Whole time over there, I was very nervous, still not feeling movement. I was just getting increasingly scared. Get checked in. Long and short of it is they were doing like an ultrasound. They were doing, I don't know, a couple other tests, things like that. And she was alive. So she was good. There was a heartbeat, there was all the things, but they were doing, yeah, like a more detailed ultrasound. And they were like, we're not really seeing her move the way that we would want her to. And the heart rate, depending on what way I was laying, would either go up more so on the left side and then down if I was more on the right. And they were like, okay, don't love this, honestly. So we're gonna do a couple more things. So they all go out. Doctor or a nurse comes back in and she was like, so I don't want to kind of like scare you guys. I don't want to like be an alarmist, but it's looking like baby girl is telling us she needs to come out probably today. And we were like, oh, okay. I think my husband was more in a state of like horrific shock than I even was because I sort of knew just instinctively that I'm like, there's no way she's making it to her due date at this point. So if today's the day, like today's the freaking day. I was like, get this baby out, get her to be okay. I don't care. We'll figure it out. We still thought we had 5 weeks. So they move us into another room for more sort of just monitoring. I go on my right side and nobody was in the room at this point. It was just my husband and I, and her heart rate or whatever they were on, it plummeted And I look at him, I was like, oh, this is like really not good. Cause they'd given me a shot to open her lungs. So it was going to be one shot that day and then one shot the following day on that Sunday. They'd be 24 hours apart. Minutes after doing that, and then seeing on the monitor that the heart rate had dropped that much, one or two of them come in. They're like, okay, so we're actually not going to wait until tomorrow. We're going to get her out right now. So go through an emergency C-section. They prep me for that. Generally speaking, the emergency C-section actually was not a bad experience. If I'm being honest, I was like pretty calm through that. I think the thing that was making me so calm was knowing that she was going to get out. I almost didn't want her in me anymore. I was like, I just want her out. I want them to make her okay, whatever they need to do. So we have the emergency C-section. And she was transverse and breached. So she was nowhere near where she needed to be. So I feel them trying to like move her down and around and getting her out and everything. They get her out. There was not a cry at first. That was very scary. She was alive, but it took a minute for her to like let out a little cry. She finally did, but it was pretty weak. And then they took her into the NICU like basically immediately. And then I'm, getting stitched up and all of the things. And they asked my husband, they were like, hey, while that's happening, do you want to like come in with us? We're probably gonna need you to fill out some paperwork and and he is still traumatized from this, like quite severely, honestly. And mind you, he's really does not have experience in hospital. So like my whole parents' story, like I think I just have a little bit of, unfortunately, background in dealing with some sort of gory things. So I almost wish it could have been me that could have, gone in and handled all of that, because I've just felt so bad that he had to go through all of that alone too. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy too, because even to this day, we don't know exactly what happened. Basically, all we know is that all of her like fetal blood, I guess, leaked into mine. So they had sent out the placenta for like testing and stuff. They still don't know what happened, if there was like a leak or, what it was. It doesn't appear to be that way, but they just think it was kind of like just a fluky thing. They don't even know that, because I didn't have any like trauma to my stomach or to myself, as far as I know, throughout that whole pregnancy. So unless it was maybe they're thinking it was maybe like a slow leak, because I didn't feel her stop moving immediately. It seemed a little bit less and less over time. But yeah, we still have no idea what happened. So basically, she was just like essentially barely had any blood to like keep her alive. So she had just lost a lot of oxygen. So she was like white as a ghost when she came out. So they did 2 transfusions that night, actually 3, because they had to transfer her we're in Northern California. So thankfully we're near UCSF Benioff, which is in Oakland, California. It's probably one of the, if not the best, like neonatal hospitals in the country. So we're very, very blessed that we're here. But basically that's where they transferred her to do another transfusion that they couldn't do at that hospital, because she needed like plasma and some other things. And yeah, without going into the rest of this experience, she spent 18 days in 3 different NICUs after that birth experience. So recovering from a C-section, and, not really, we were not home for probably the first like week. I mean, we had to go home and like get things, obviously, but we stayed at an Airbnb near one of the hospitals. I mean, none of the hospitals were particularly close to our house. So that just complicated things, and just the healing process. There's just so many things around that experience that I just did not get, that I sort of had to grieve. And I was like, one of those, I'm like, I don't need the most magical, beautiful birth experience, but like, could I have gotten just like a little bit different than that? Like, I didn't get that moment of being able to hold her right after she was born and we did not have that skin to skin time. I didn't even get to hold her for the first like 2.5 days, probably. Just that nice, calm recovery in the hospital, and then the comfort of your own home. Like, we just didn't have that. It was just back and forth between hospitals and all the things. So yeah, I mean, there's like a lot there's a lot to that and a lot to unpack that we're still sort of unpacking. But
Yeah, and definitely, like you said, I think there is a lot of grief in not having the birth experience that you expected or wanted. I mean, even when you hear that things rarely go according to plan, like you still don't think it's
yes,
going to be to the extreme that you went
right.
through, you know?
Yes, yeah. And I think it was especially shocking because like I said, the pregnancy was pretty normal, like for all intents and purposes. There was nothing they had to monitor or watch or whatever. Like then I felt like okay, I would have had a little warning about this. But and I think just the other unsettling part too is that we don't know what happened still. And so that scares us because we always sort of envisioned having maybe like two kids, right? And so we're like, do we have a second? Like, would this happen again? And doctors don't think it would. Of course, they don't know because maybe there was something that hit my stomach in a weird way or so, it's just that might have caused this. And then, of course, is the one carrying the baby or like, is there something I did and just so that unknown, I've kind of come to terms with it. And I think the more time goes on and the more that we see that she's doing well and she's okay, like the more comfortable we are with like, okay, we could do this again and not be super freaking scared to do that. But yes, just not ready. My husband certainly is not ready. I don't know if he'll ever be ready.
I know, I mean, that really is a lot to navigate though. I mean, and then when you think like, what if it does happen again? I mean,
Those
especially
what
like
ifs
you
are
said, when they don't know what caused it. I mean, kind of the same thing as we've had three losses. And so, every time I was trying to get pregnant again, it's like, oh my gosh, like what if this happens again? And I just think all of these things create so much trauma that we don't even like
yes.
realize that we're carrying.
Yes, 1000%. Yeah.
So what are some ways that you found that helped you cope with your grief?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? Well, I have to say, I mean, I was grief coaching and I've sort of been in this space prior to all of this happening. So honestly, I feel like just talking about it in the way that I have and being vulnerable and sharing that experience has really helped me a lot in finding people just like you who understand in their own way, even if I have to say that was a really kind of tricky part about the earlier days of when this happened and even in the first few weeks. I had some very well-meaning friends or people be like, I had a friend or my cousin's best friend also had a baby in the NICU and they're totally fine now. They're happy and healthy and whatever. In the thick of what you are going through, as much as you would think hearing those things are helpful for me, I literally was like, please do not compare me to anyone else. I don't feel out of the woods with this yet. I I understand why people want to, encourage you like, hold on to that hope. Like so and so it's okay. So Audrey is my daughter. She'll be just fine. Like I couldn't hear that at the time. I was like, I need you to just honor what I am going through and not try and silver lining me. Like that's not what I need right now. Yeah, so that was tough because I knew that would come from a good place. So with grief overall, and then of course I'm going through this whole experience without my parents, right? Like that was also just a whole layer to this. My husband has two happy, healthy parents. They were with both of us, but mostly there to support him. I did not have that. I didn't have my mom or dad to visit me or to text them or to call them or whatever. Like he had that outlet. I didn't. And even the night that she was born in the afternoon, and then like that night when she had to be transferred, he went down. I was like, I want one of us to be there. I can't go anywhere. So like, please go be with her. And he had his sister and brother-in-law and mom and dad all there with him. And meanwhile, I'm sitting in this hospital bed, like completely by myself. And I'm like, where's my support? Who do I have? And not that friends or family wouldn't have called or tried to visit or whatever if I really wanted them to, but it was like the two people that I need the most right now, I don't have. And so trying to process all of that and still even now just watching her grow up and watch, just being grandparents, like I don't have that luxury. So yeah, things we definitely take advantage of when they're here. But so so to answer your question, what has helped me? Talking about it for sure. Honestly, this is very personal. I think I am the type that I actually embrace that alone time a little bit. as like lonely and isolating as it is to be by myself, I am very much the type of person that sort of needs that to like really process what's going on. Sometimes for me, it's almost like more detrimental having too many people in my ear and trying to make me feel better and stuff. I'm like, I just need to sit with this grief. I need to sit with myself in silence, process this in my own brain without the opinions and thoughts of other people to understand what has happened and what is happening currently. So that, I mean, I guess I sort of encourage that alone time if that feels right to you. But for some people, it might be surrounding yourself with a good support system. So of course I encourage that. And finding people who truly get it, right? Because there are some people in our life that maybe mean well or will come at us with those comments and things, but like sometimes you just need people who have been through something, even just similar, if not like kind of the same, to be like, you know what? I just want to sit with you in this and just know that I see you, I understand you, and I am not here to make it better because I know I can't make it better for you, but I'm here to walk this path with you. So that I think is amazing. Journaling has helped me a lot. Just again, just writing. I'm a writer, so writing my thoughts down and just kind of getting it out a little bit. Meditation, breath work, going on walks is big for me. That's another thing that for me personally just helps me process things. I listen to podcasts, I listen to music. I mean, I just try and utilize resources around me that just keep me uplifted and inspired, or if nothing else, just distracted for a little while. If it's like a podcast that talks about, trashy reality TV, so be it. Like that's what I need that day. That's what I need that day. Like I can't be so heavy all the time. So yeah, I kind of get my help from a lot of different mediums.
I think that's the great thing about, the age that we live in now is like you
Yeah.
you have all of these resources that maybe you wouldn't have had before. And yeah, just
Yeah.
like you, I remember, coming home on some of my saddest days. I'm like, you know what? I just want to watch like The Office and laugh. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just want to do something normal for a change.
Yes. Yeah.
Grief is exhausting when you're feeling
Oh,
it like all day, every day, all the time.
yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So were you surprised by the people who did show up for you versus who didn't show up for you?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, there were people I sort of thought would show up a little differently than they did. I guess though, because I had been through the deaths of my parents and I saw who showed up then and who didn't, I was less surprised, to be honest, when all the things with my daughter came up. But definitely in that situation, I was kind of negatively surprised with a couple people, sure. But I think I was pleasantly surprised too. And the beautiful thing is because I have built a community sort of around grief and loss is like I shared not every nitty gritty part of our experience, but like I was sharing that fairly openly and just I got some beautiful messages or DMs or whatever from people that are just like, whatever they would say, I can't relate to what you're going through, but like just my heart goes out to you. Like, I'm thinking of you. I'm thinking of your beautiful little girl and I'm sending her prayers and hugs and love and all of the things. And that energy and feeling that sometimes from complete strangers was like, wow, like so, so beautiful. But even if you don't have any sort of online community that you've created or otherwise to sort of help you along in that, like, yeah, definitely there are some people that will come out of the woodwork a little and surprise you with, there's a lot of women like, or girls I maybe went to high school with or whoever that sort of came out of the woodwork with their own story. And they're just like, sharing their story, not in like a comparison way, but just like, I feel you so deeply right now. Like I had a tough time too in my own way, not to compare, but like I'm really thinking of you right now because it's not easy. So that was a really pleasant surprise throughout all of it too.
Yeah, strangers can be amazing.
They really
They can
can.
say
I'm just
like
like,
the
sometimes
kindest
strangers are
things.
more helpful than some very close family members. I'm like, cool, okay. Like I'll take what I can get.
And I think that in general, that birth trauma itself is something that isn't really talked about because I
Not at
think,
all.
there's so many ways that a birth can be traumatic. And
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think, we're just taught like, well, that's just what you do as women. You just go through it, you just suck it up, you just,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that we don't talk about.
Yeah. 1000%. Or that maybe because every woman has sort of their own experience, like for some reason it just, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that's about, honestly. Like why there's not as much talked about it. Maybe it's because I don't know. Like because I sort of work in this grief space, like of course the death of a loved one is a big thing, but like pregnancy loss though, whether it's in utero or after, like, or child loss is a big one too, of course, but like, yeah, the actual trauma of birth, like I do see a few people talking about that here and there, but that is long lasting. I mean, like I said, I even mentioned like the conversations my husband and I have. Do we even want to have a second child? I mean, would we even be having this conversation if we didn't go through what we went through? No, we'd probably be very comfortably talking about a second at some point. So yeah, no, there's a ripple effect for sure.
Yeah, I don't really know the reason why it isn't like talked about either. It's one of those things. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's because people are afraid to talk about it or
Right. Or there's some discomfort around it, or they just don't want to think about it because it was so traumatic. Like,
yeah, it can
yeah, I mean,
definitely be hard to like relive that experience.
yes. Yeah. I mean, even just talking about it just now, it didn't make me uncomfortable, but it did take me back, of course, to the day it happened and the fear around even driving to the hospital. It brings up things that are not particularly pleasant to think about. And I could say the same thing with the deaths of my parents too. I mean, there was a lot leading up to that that was very scary, and getting the calls that they were declining and that I needed to come and then ultimately say goodbye. It's just, yeah, that stuff is hard to relive. So I think it makes total sense why people don't want to talk about their losses or grief or, relive that. It is painful.
Well, and especially for people who maybe didn't grow up talking about grief or like
Yeah.
who just don't like are more afraid of it or uncomfortable with it, it can
Yeah.
be really hard. And, it
It's
can
this
be hard to,
taboo
yeah,
subject, which it shouldn't be. That's what I just want to scream from the rooftops. And like, of course, encouraging people, talk about what you're comfortable talking about and don't force yourself, but also not shying away from it, because sometimes just being able to say like, I am not okay. I am still really struggling with this. And I think there's a lot of shame around that maybe if you have, or unfortunately, go through a pregnancy loss or lose a child or go through a traumatic birth experience, that there's, if you feel like you're grieving that even a little bit too long, that there's shame thrown at us for that. Or people are like, how could you not be over that by now? Like that happened like a year and a half ago, whatever it is. And it makes you feel like you're grieving wrong or like you're not doing something right, or it's, and there's so, I think this is the saddest thing about grief and navigating grief is just the shame that is associated with it. But it's a
definitely.
life altering event. How can we not, even if we're not stuck in it, how do we not carry that with us? Who we were before we go through something traumatic or we lose someone we loved or whatever. How are we not a different person after all of that?
Well, and especially because all of us go through grief at some point. I mean, we may go
Yes.
through something different, but we all lose a loved one or we all lose something important to us. So
Yeah.
I think it kind of goes hand in hand with how mental health in general is not really
Yes.
like, I don't know if valued is the word, but you know what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say. Like,
absolutely.
and I think grief is part of that. So we just don't put a priority on it. Like, okay, you just need to move on. But it's like, would you say that to somebody who broke their leg? Like, okay, you broke it.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Go ahead
move
and go
on.
up and
Get to
walk now.
walking
Excuse me.
again.
But yeah, I could
Right.
re-break it. What are you talking about? And
Right.
the human mind and psyche and our soul, it doesn't work like a broken appendage, right? Like it's more complicated than that. And there's triggers and there's things that come up that we have to like re-grieve and navigate because it's all so new. So yeah, to put any sort of pressure on a person or expectation that they need to be done grieving at any point or whatever. I mean, it's just understanding that grief is an evolution. It is an ever evolving process. And it's, why we need to have grace with people. And especially when it comes to a traumatic, birth experience. And that's a lot of people that either know our story or don't again, our daughter's only 10 months, but they're just like, so you ready for baby number two? I think you're ready for baby number two any day now. I'm like, you're
Like, no, no.
joking. No, my husband,
Let me
like,
just
he's
tell you, no.
like physically ill thinking about it. Like, I can laugh about it now, but seriously. Yeah. So yeah, grief literacy, there's still a long way to go.
I feel like people should just stop asking about when are you having kids, more like when are you having more kids, just like things like that. I
Yes.
know they're trying to make conversation, but it makes so many people like uncomfortable. You know?
Yeah. Or they're kind of making light of it,
Mhm.
especially when it's like I still don't agree with it, but it's one thing if it's like a newly married couple, because my husband and I went through this and they were just like, oh, so when you having a baby? And we got pregnant like not maybe like a year after we got married, right? Like it wasn't a crazy long time. But especially for people that have been through a pregnancy loss or any kind of loss that, requires mental and physical healing. And then to like, even if they kind of say that in jest or almost kind of making light of it, either out of their discomfort or they just aren't considering how deep that wound really is. Yeah, just don't. Like, especially when it's someone who has been through something traumatic like that. It's just not a joke. Like, it means something different for us now, you know.
So, what advice do you have for somebody who's trying to learn how to process their grief?
hmm I think just the first step is just kind of alluded to this earlier, just sitting with your grief, with your emotions, getting curious about it, kind of just getting to know it. What does it look and feel like to you? Mentally, but physically too. How does grief show up in your body? For me, it's like tense shoulders. It's just stress and anxiety in general. Just that's where it shows up for me. Taking really deep breaths, being really gentle with yourself. We have so much pressure around us from friends, from family, from a societal perspective, from all of it, work, even, right? Like sometimes we have to like get back to work fairly quickly after these things happen. For many of us, companies, they allow maybe some bereavement leave, depending on where you work, but like it's not very long. And is a traumatic birth a part of that? Or is pregnancy loss a part of that? In some cases, probably not, or maybe not. So just giving yourself, I always like to say, sort of like make time for your grief every day, especially if you still maybe perhaps have other kids to take care of, or you have a job, or you have a partner, you have just other responsibilities, right? We don't always have the luxury of being able to just sit on our couch all day and cry and wallow and process like we need to. So I always say, even if that means getting up 5 to 10 minutes earlier and journaling, or just literally sitting in as much silence as you can, even if that means you got to go out to your car or go on a walk or whatever, and just feel it and let the tears flow if they have to, let the anger, come out and sort of make itself known if you have to, process the fear that you might be feeling. And I know how uncomfortable and painful it is to go through those things. Like there's a reason people push those things away. It doesn't always feel good to feel those things. We don't maybe perhaps want to cry. We don't, but that release is one of the most important and pivotal ways that we cannot move on, but we move forward and we can process it both mentally and then, literally kind of shake some of these things off like physically too, if that makes sense. So again, whether that is however you sort of need to get it out, whether through that's like some physical activity or journaling, or I even say like if you want to sort of talk it out, like just use a note on your phone, like use your notes app or your voice note app or something like that, and kind of just talk through what's on your mind. I like to do that in the morning and in the evening journaling, just because especially with the evening, like it's great to sort of just like get everything out before you go to bed and just take some pressure off of yourself and know that it is a process. This is not something that ends. And I don't say that in a way to like scare anybody or make it sound intimidating or like, oh my God, what are you talking about? This doesn't end. Like, I didn't ask for this in the first place. No, you didn't. And that is so unfair. And it is so unfortunate that we are dealt the hand of cards that we are sometimes. And it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't seem logical. And we didn't ask for this. And what do we do to deserve this? All the things. There's sometimes like just times with loss that things just don't make sense. And releasing the pressure to try and make sense of it or find a why behind it or place blame on yourself or anybody else for anything that happened. Sometimes bad things happen and trauma happens and things we didn't ask for happen. And that is how grief presents itself. It just shows up on our calendar and it's like, you're going to go through something really bad today. But I'm not removing myself from your calendar. So you're going to have to buckle up. So I say that in jest, but like seriously, I mean, it's so, yeah, it can just feel so unfair how we feel targeted by things. But yeah, I think that's my biggest piece of advice is just release any pressure to make sense of it. Know that there is, at least in some situations, probably no fault to be had. It is just an unfortunate series of events that probably, or maybe, depending on what you believe, did or didn't happen for a reason. Like, don't feel the pressure to find a reason behind it. And do just one thing that sparks joy for you that day. So even if that is just having your cup of coffee and you just sit with that with your eyes closed and just feel the warmth on your skin and just be like, okay, I am here. This is my present moment. I am in pain right now. I am struggling right now. I feel XYZ right now, but I recognize that this is a moment in time and that these emotions and these feelings can and probably will come up again, but I am open to receiving joy. I am open to receiving light and you know, I don't want to feel this heaviness all the time. And just know that that heaviness, the shock, the darkness that you might be in and feeling right now is not going to last forever. These are all just moments in time. It is part of the human experience. So just making some room for that and knowing that what you are feeling and thinking right now, it is not, it's just, it's normal. No matter, I know the thoughts can be dark sometimes and of course encourage help if they are especially dark thoughts. Like please seek the appropriate help if you need it and check in with yourself and know if that is what you need. But you're going through something very, very painful right now, and that deserves to be recognized. And just know you're also not alone in this journey. And even if somebody can't empathize and kind of get your exact pain, there are plenty of us here who have been through difficult things who can at least just be there to say like, I see you today. I witness you. I witness your grief. I am just holding space for you, even if you don't need to say one word to me. Just I'm just that sort of invisible presence and invisible support is sometimes all someone needs.
Yeah, you're right. That is sometimes all we need. Like, I didn't need somebody to fix it because there's
Yeah.
nothing you can fix, but just knowing, hey, you're here to sit with me. You're here to say, you know what? It does suck. I'm sorry. It
Yes.
isn't fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think people want to fix us and they can't fix us.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, especially with friends and families, like again, even though their delivery maybe is sometimes less than ideal, they want us to be happy and they don't want to see us in pain. And it's uncomfortable for them, whether it's uncomfortable because it makes them uncomfortable or whether they are just like, I just want to see you happy. I just wish this didn't happen to you. And so even again, there's sometimes such good intentions behind it, but sometimes we do exactly what you just said. Just need to be like, nope, this really freaking sucks. And let's just leave it at that. And let's wallow in that for a moment. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we need those good friends or family that can just wallow with us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go get a cocktail. No, not overdoing it on the cocktails. Let's go
Right.
get a cocktail. Let's get a glass of wine and let's just freaking vent about this. And
Right.
let's work through this. I mean, I'm all about like a healthy balance here. So yeah.
So if people wanted to connect with you or find out more information, where would they go for that?
So you can find pretty much everything I offer and do at lossesbecomegains.com. So I am Losses Become Gains on Instagram, and then my Life with Grief podcast, where I get into lots of griefy topics on Instagram and TikTok. So that's just at Life with Grief Podcast. And yeah, I mean, on my website, it's everything I sort of mentioned earlier, my membership, ways to work with me. I have a great sort of like 2 week, like relief in your grief experience challenge, as I sort of like to call it, where it's just a very easy, sort of like very digestible 14-day little thing to just sort of help you along and get some relief for what you might be feeling right now. So that's a great resource. And then I have some, free downloadable tools on there too, if you just want to kind of see what I'm all about and get a taste of what tools and things that I offer. So
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I like things that break it down into like little things you can do each day because it can kind of be overwhelming to think like
yes.
as a broad picture, like I need to fix my grief. But then it's like, here are like little things you can do. I like it.
Right. That's why I created that because I was like, let's just start with, because that's like one of the biggest things I hear is some people are just like, I just need some freaking relief. I need some peace. I just need a place to start that's not overwhelming for me. And maybe they're not ready to commit to a one-on-one coaching thing. I totally get it. So it's great. I mean, and the things in that challenge, I sort of call it, is, I mean, I think a lot of them take 10 minutes a day, less than 10, 15 minutes. There's like meditations, there's sort of little like sections or modules where I just sort of like talk through a particular topic that day. It's very digestible and really sort of takes you from like, okay, let's talk like day one of your grief and what you're feeling right now. And let's just take a baby step in moving you forward and just to like shift your perspective a little bit. And that's really the core of everything I offer and everything I do is just baby steps. Like, let's take, like I've been saying this whole time, take the pressure off, take your foot off the gas, like acknowledge that this is a hefty process, right? So it's just starting somewhere is good.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story and all of this amazing grief information with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tara, for sharing your story with us. Grief is such an interesting topic because while we all go through it, so many seem so lost at how to deal with it or even how to talk about it. We're kind of taught that this is just how you grieve. You're sad for a little while, and then you get better and you move on. But as we talked about, for those of us who have been through traumatic events, this is not even close to how it works. We don't ever move on from our loved ones. We just sometimes have to silence the grief based on the feedback we get from the people in our lives. Then we're just left to suffer alone and either deal with the grief alone, or we just push it down and don't deal with it at all. It's okay to be sad for however long you need to be sad. For many of us, that's off and on for the rest of our lives. The hole that is left from our missing baby or our missing loved one isn't one that will ever completely go away. We just learn to live life with the grief and move forward. Did you ever feel like you had a timeline on your grief? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.